best way to make sure you're hiring the right person for the job you have posted? Well, if you go to the internet, you're going to get all sorts of suggestions on how to interview well and figure out if someone is the right candidate for the job. Unfortunately, there is some good advice on how to hire well, and there is an enormous amount of bad advice out there. In fact, we're talking today about according to this article, the 7 job interview secrets that every applicant should know. And I would call this the 7 worst examples for jobs that tell you should absolutely turn tail and run the other direction. Some of the worst for how people choose to hire for their positions. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast episode and what you should be doing to make sure you're hiring the right person for the job. Hey, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and I appreciate you checking out the podcast today. If you enjoy the show and you're a first-time listener, click that subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice. And don't forget, we have a Patreon where you can support the podcast at patreon.com/goodadvice. And if you want to advertise on the show, you can always reach out, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Having said that, we got a quick ad for the show today. Let's dive into this. See you soon. Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket. All right, so I almost made it without having to see another example of an awful, worst of the worst hiring strategy. And I got this list. I found this list. It came up on it was trending, I guess, on Facebook or what have you. So I've done a lot of episodes on this, things that are just like so painstakingly cringe for how people choose to hire other people. And this article that popped up on Facebook, maybe it was LinkedIn, I can't remember, but it's called 7 Job Interview Secret Tricks Every Applicant Should Know. Now, I've talked a lot on the podcast about some of the absolute dumbest things that people do whenever they're hiring someone. And I was curious. I thought, I wonder if we'll see one of those things in this list. Sure enough, it showed up. So if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I've talked a lot about the dish trick. Some people call it the coffee cup test. And there's a bit to talk about here. Now, for you in your business, you might be thinking about, I need to hire someone. And what's really common in business is that many of us are growing businesses without any formal business training. Maybe you didn't go to business school, you never got an MBA, you never, whatever accolade that some people like to throw out in terms of what makes them qualified. Many of us, we learned how to do business just by running a business, just by growing a business, right? We learned how to sell because we have been in conversations where we've had to sell to other people. And, it's very much a forged by fire approach, I guess. So similarly, many of us find ourselves in positions where we're hiring maybe our first employee, or maybe we've gone through a couple of candidates and we're thinking, you know what, I got to get a bit more serious about this. I really need to bring someone on who, I got to treat this like a real business. Or maybe to this point, you've always hired friends, family, the casual 1099 who do, they do a few hours for you and you're like, okay, it's time we really scale this thing. It's time we really bring people in. I'm going to be hiring someone. What the heck do I do? Now I'm going to tell you about some things you can do. And before I get into that, what I'll also say is just like an umbrella, I think like a baseline understanding in hiring is that no matter how good you get at hiring, you will eventually make a bad hire. I think it's important to get that out there because one of the most common things I hear from business owners is the fear around hiring. I don't want to hire the wrong person. Oh, what if I hire them and it doesn't work out? That's life, okay? You're going to make mistakes. Even when you interview extremely well, even when you ask the right questions, that person's success is ultimately, it's partly you, but it's ultimately them. It's their choice to show up every day and commit to the role that you've hired them for. And some people simply don't. Some people, their aspirations change, their ambitions change, things happen. And so all that to say, if your fear in hiring is, I don't want to make a bad hire, it's going to happen at some point eventually. It just is what it is. So the simplest thing is to be able to take that in stride and just move on. It's also not unlike people who get really hesitant around sales and they say, oh, I don't want to be out there selling because I don't want someone to tell me no. I'm scared of someone telling me no. Or, I don't know what it would feel like if someone just crushed me. Well, it's going to happen at some point. You can't sell without someone telling you no. Same thing's true with podcasting or social media or what have you. All these things that we typically are reserved about doing because of the fear of failure or rejection. That's just part of it. That's just what's on the menu. It's part of the meal. It just is what it is. And I think becoming more savvy in business means getting more understanding of some of the yuck that's on the plate and instead choosing to eat the fish and spit out the bones. I'm going to take what I can, do what I can, and move forward with what I can. Because really, we're all just doing our best anyway. So that's like the baseline foundational concept, I think, for us to understand today when we think about hiring. So I had this article, I was looking at it, and the 7 job interview secret. I couldn't make it through this entire list without just like closing this out and being like, this is ridiculous. No one's going to do this. And if anyone does do this, you need to get up and leave immediately. But coming in at number 1, the famous dish trick, or they call it the coffee cup test. Now, I first came across this because when I first heard about this, I thought it had to be made up. I thought it could not be real because it's so preposterous. And yet it is now on this article. It first came up to me through someone on LinkedIn who was giving genuine hiring advice. Someone was saying, hey, what's your best advice for hiring well? And this person who I was connected with said, hey, this is my go-to. This is what I like to do. It's called the dish trick. I read it and thought, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So having said that, this is what the dish trick is. This is what the coffee cup trick is. You sit down for an interview, and we'll say it since most people listening to the podcast are hiring people or have hired people. Let's do it from the perspective of the person hiring. Your applicant comes in, they sit down, and you say, hey, can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I get you a glass of water? Can I get you, something to eat, whatever. The person says yes. Well, what the dish trick is you go get that thing, you walk them to the break room or wherever that thing is, you give them a cup of coffee, you do the interview, and then at the end of the interview, if they offer to clean out the cup or at least take it back to the break room, then this person is a better hire than the person who said nothing at all. The person who said nothing at all is, as it's been presented to me, not a team player, not willing to get their hands dirty, not thinking about anyone but themselves, so on and so forth, what have you. And in fact, the person who first shared this on LinkedIn, the way they framed it was no matter how good the interview goes, this person could totally knock it out of the park. If they don't offer to clean out the dish, I never hire them, is how they said it. Now, one of the reasons why I think this is the dumbest thing in the world is because there could be any number of reasons why someone doesn't offer to clean out the cup. Um, Culturally, there could be people who think that it's maybe too forward to take the cup to the break room or offer to do something like that. You could have someone who is an incredible fit for the position, but maybe isn't as extroverted or charismatic as other people. And so they may be racked with anxiety or nervousness or thinking a lot about the job or thinking about how they answered questions. An interview is a very intimidating conversation, even when you're really a great fit. It's not an easy conversation to sit in front of someone who is evaluating really everything you've done in the last however many years. So to get mad, or worse, to never hire someone because they don't offer, is completely missing the point for what makes a great interview. So sure enough, on this list, this came up at number one, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. This thing's ridiculous. Number two that's on here is making the applicant wait longer for the interview than what was anticipated. And the way this is presented is the person comes in, let's say they're coming in for a 9 a.m. interview. Well, they come in at 9 a.m. and you say, hey, we're just getting a couple things together. Do you mind waiting for about 10 minutes and then we'll get your interview happening? Okay, yeah, great. Sounds good. Well, after 10 minutes goes by, you come back out and you say, hey, I'm really sorry. We got another call happening, or, the person interviewing you isn't quite here yet. Would you mind waiting another 10 minutes? So they say, yeah, okay, fine. I waited 10 minutes. Why not another 10? Then you come out and you say, after the second 10 minutes, it's been 20 minutes now. You say, hey, would you mind waiting 15 more minutes? I'm so sorry. It's just because, and this is designed to test your candidate's emotional stability. I hear stories like this, and I think there is no better way to communicate that your organization cares little about the people they employ. They don't care about your time. They don't care about your priorities. And the irony about all this is it communicates a business that really doesn't even appreciate your intentionality around time and your outputs. Think about who would want to go work for an organization where things always take an hour longer than they're supposed to. So it's just a wild red flag. I mean, it's crazy. Number three on this list, asking questions about really uncomfortable situations. So like pretending like you're mad at the candidate, yelling at the candidate, shouting at the candidate, doing things where you act offended to see how does your potential candidate respond to a high stress situation. Just for the sake of time, let me just kind of read through all of these real quick. And then, because a lot of these, my thoughts on them are very similar. There's that one. There is the one of the interviewer ignoring the candidate. So the candidate comes in and the interviewer is typing away at the computer, doesn't look up, basically treats them like a ghost and just makes the person sit in silence. And as the person says, like, is everything okay? You just ignore them. You don't respond. You stay focused on the task until finally you see if they're willing to sit patiently, if they're comfortable with that, or, what have you. And then the other one that showed up on here, making your employees rate the person and doing a group interview with them. I hate it. It's all stupid. So, which even that last one just on its own doesn't sound that bad. There's nothing wrong with like culture fit and figuring that out, but presenting the candidate as, hey, come meet the team, which I remember when I worked at a restaurant, this would happen a lot. The manager, because I was one of the new hire trainers, where the manager would say, hey, we have an applicant. Can you sit with them? And I'd go sit with them. And it was never presented this way, but it was always so funny to me. I would go sit down with this new candidate, waiting for the manager to come meet them. And the candidate would say all sorts of things that blew my mind. Like, I'm just here for a couple of weeks to get a quick buck and then I'm out of here. And I think like, why are you telling me this? Like what are you doing? Well, the whole point about this scheme around hiring is getting the person to meet their coworkers and then having the coworkers report back to the boss. Hey, what are they like? Good, bad? What do you think? Anyway, here's the deal. Reading a lot of these on this list, my takeaway is that there are a lot of psychopath bosses out there who are literally insane. I mean, literally, you are emotionally unstable if you are doing any of these things when it comes to a new hire, except for maybe the last one. You're probably not unstable if you're having your employees rate a new hire, but like the ignoring them, even the dish trick, yelling at them and seeing how they respond as like a test. A couple other ones that aren't on this list is like the laundry trick, where you put laundry on a desk and you say, "Hey, I'll be right back," to see if they'll fold the laundry if they're a team player. This stuff is psychotic. This stuff is silly. And here's the deal. The best way to think about hiring, and I think this is why people get this wrong, and I think there is a little bit of a culture piece here where, depending on how long you've been in the workforce, you might have a different perspective on managing than what works today. In that some people see management as very much an ego thing, a reputation thing. You can probably think of a boss where they mentioned their job title to you, they talked about their position to you, they lorded it over you. And for them, it very much was ego driven. For them, the title was all about what they were focused on. I see this a lot in sales organizations where someone was a great salesperson, but they're a terrible manager. They become the manager of the sales team. And instead of becoming a better boss, they instead say, when there's friction or when there's, clashing, the person says, "Hey, well, don't forget you're talking to the number one sales leader 3 years in a row. That's why I'm the sales leader. It's why I'm the sales manager. And it's why I'm the vice president and you're the, whatever." Or in fact, now I think about it, I was doing a team event years ago and they were trying to solve this problem. And there was an intern on the team who gave out a really great suggestion. And the person said, "Well, you know what, man, that's why you're the intern and I'm the boss." So it always stuck with me. I just thought, I can't believe this person just said that. So for a lot of people, they see leadership as the lording over of someone. And if you want your organization, if you want your team to move forward faster and be more effective, the better way to think of it is if you think of it like a sports team, the coach doesn't put people in positions to validate the coach's reputation. The coach puts people in positions because that person is best, their skill set is best designed for that role. And when they do that role well, the team as a whole lifts. The team as a whole can win. There is no ego involved there. For some teams, maybe. But that person's the quarterback, that person's the right guard, the right tackle. Here's the point guard. I'm mixing sports, but you have people who are very good at a certain task, and collaboratively, we are all trying to win. It's also why I like this analogy more than we're a family here, because at the end of the day, I'm never firing my mom. I'm not firing my brother. I'm not cutting my sister out of the team. And yet, your company that you manage and the people that you love and care for, when rubber meets the road, you are going to make the best choices you can to keep the business afloat. And sometimes that will mean saying goodbye to people that you care for. Now, there's a whole nother conversation to be had there on when things go wrong in a business. Should your frontline employees be the one to bear the brunt of it? No, they shouldn't. Should there be accountability for you as the boss? Yes, there absolutely should be. But people get hired and fired all the time. So to call ourselves a family, I feel like is a bit disingenuous. We're a sports team. We're trying to win. We're trying to grow our impact. And we're going to bring on people who can fill certain roles in certain positions because we believe they're the best at that job. And as time goes on, we're swapping people out. We're moving people on. Hey, you were here for a season and it was great. But now, we're changing our goals or our aspirations. Or you bring someone on and you know what? It really wasn't a good fit. It didn't fit well. It wasn't a culture fit. There's all sorts of reasons. So you're going to fire people. It's going to happen. All this in mind, though, understanding that as a sports team, we're collaborative in this. We're all trying to win. We're all trying to be successful. So when I hire someone, I'm not thinking about how does this person make me feel or how does this person validate me? Instead, I'm thinking of certain customers, I'm thinking about how this will make life easier. I have a handful of marketing customers where I'm thinking of this next year. I'm thinking about a web developer role that I'm hiring for, and I'm thinking about the skill set I need to make those customers to get the result that I have promised those customers. That's all I'm thinking about. My job as a boss then is to make sure I train them well, I coach them well, I get them on the same page in terms of the values we have as an organization, the things that we care about, frontline, the decisions we're never going to make. So, from a marketing perspective, from an SEO perspective, we're not going to use AI. That's just a hard no for our organization in the sense of none of the content is going to be AI driven, none of it's going to be AI created. And so, that is nothing about the person I hire, but in coaching them, that's letting them know, hey, this is how this role is done. It's my job as the leader, as the boss, to set the tone for those kinds of things because it's what makes us more effective for what we deliver for our customers. It's not about me. It's not about me being able to be the one to say, this is how we do it. All that to say, here's how you hire really well. I think, first of all, you have to be mindful of the position you're hiring for. Speaking back to that customer outcome, what is the outcome you're trying to accomplish? And how does hiring this person get you closer to that ideal outcome? Unfortunately, what people often do in hiring is they know their business is sinking or struggling or not working. And so what they do is they go to the hiring world and they say, hey, I need someone. I took a screenshot of this the other day and it blew my mind. It was, I think it was like a hiring board. I can't remember where the picture came from, but the person said, looking to hire a diamond in the rough. And I looked at it and I almost put it on social media or reposted it on my social media, but then I thought, I don't want to cause too much of a hubbub about this, but it was hiring a diamond in the rough. And then I looked at it and it was basically like, I'm looking for someone who, really values quality work and is a diamond in the rough. And as I read it, all I could think was this person was screaming was cheap, 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 cheap. Diamond in the rough is someone cheap. This is someone saying, I want to hire someone who will not charge me much money, but does great work. Wow. Hello. Doesn't exist. Does not exist. This is the funniest part to me about hiring in general is people who get frustrated because they hire a role for $10 an hour. And then they say, yeah, wow, they just weren't really that great of an employee. Yeah, that's because the average paying dollar amount for that position is $40 an hour. Years ago, I was in a conversation with a woman. We were working through her business and doing some coaching, consulting together. And we were talking about her business. And she said, I'm trying to hire for, and I'm going to throw out some numbers because I don't remember exactly what it was, but she said, hey, I'm trying to hire for this position and I'm trying to put $60,000 to it. And I said, okay, what's the average pay for that position right now? And she said, it's like around 100K. And I said, okay. I said, so what kind of candidate do you think you're going to find? And she said, hopefully a really good one. I said, and really her question was, what's your advice? How do I find this person for 60K for a job that typically pays 100K? And I don't necessarily get frustrated about this in the sense of I don't get mad that someone asked me this question, but I do think it's kind of laughable because I think, do you really think you're going to find an incredible person who would take 40K less than what they could get elsewhere? Because think about this. Let's play this through for a second. The person who comes to work for you at 60K, why are they doing that? Why can't you pay them more? In her case, she couldn't afford to. The business is struggling. We can't hire it. We can't pay more for that position. Well, do you think it's a great long-term strategy to hire someone below the average pay, hoping that it fixes what's broken in your business? Do you think that person will be able to do that? Probably not. So often in hiring, we are so disconnected and mismatched on the outcomes and why we're hiring for that position anyway. For me, the reason I hire is because I am at capacity. I no longer have the time to do certain things that I would like to see done. I have outcomes that I have sold to customers that would be better served if someone whose specific entire job and skill set was around this thing. So I hire according to those things. I don't hire because I am desperate, floundering on the verge of bankruptcy. And oh God, where's the diamond in the rough? Right. Same thing is true, by the way, for the quality of customers that you pick up. If you're growing a great business, if you're growing a great brand, it's in your best interest to find customers who see the value in what you're doing, who see the value in your services, and who aren't saying, hey, you're going to charge me 10K. Well, I'd like you to charge me 5K because I'm a really great business. Because, hey, I really need a favor. Hey, I really need a break. These are never great customers long term. So know the position you're hiring for, know why you want to hire them, and then to become a better interviewer, shockingly, you need to do more interviews. And when you have these interviews, you're asking for two things. And it's weird to me how people really go from ditch to ditch on this. The two things I see are make sure they can do the job. Make sure they can do the job. The rest doesn't matter. The other ditch I see is it doesn't matter if they can do the job. Make sure they're high character, high quality, high integrity people. Well, the problem with the second one is you bring in these people who are so well-to-do and well-meaning. I don't think well-to-do is the right expression there. They're so well-meaning, but you're spending all these hours teaching them and training them to do something that they're honestly not going to learn that quickly to do well. Now, if it's something that anyone can do, maybe. But if you're hiring for a certain skill set or position, do you think someone's going to learn how to do that as well as someone else who's been doing that for 5 years? In a 6-month process? No, not at all. So you're hiring for both. You're hiring for both sides of the same coin. I'm looking for someone who has the skill set, and I'm looking for someone who has the values that I care about. So what I then do is whenever I'm interviewing, I ask for both. I ask for proof of both. And I won't get super in the weeds on this because I've broken this down excessively in past podcast content, but you're asking for them to give evidence of these things that go beyond yes, no, black and white answers. So I'm typically asking for specific instances and experiences, and they're not made up experiences where I say, hey, say that I gave you a cup of coffee. What would you do with the cup at the end? It's real experiences. So I don't want to know how my interviewee is going to respond under pressure by yelling at them. Instead, I'm going to say, hey, tell me about a time that a customer was disappointed in your work. Give me a real instance. Because I want to know, are we going to ever disappoint our customers? Yeah, we will. It's unfortunate. We will. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. So tell me about a time that this happened. Tell me about a time you made a mistake in your business. And what was the outcome? And have a real honest conversation with someone. These are values-based questions. Well, yeah, I made a mistake. And so I reached out to the customer and let them know that it was my bad. I think about a time I worked at Chewy's. This is just personal anecdote. I worked at Chewy's and I put an order in wrong. And at the end, the customer said, hey, just curious. They had a great experience and they were doing the tip and all this stuff. And the person said, hey, just curious about the meal. Was that your mistake or the kitchen's mistake? Every server, it's like beat to death. Oh, it was the kitchen's fault. Oh, the chef screwed it up. We don't say chef, but the kitchen screwed it up. Yada, yada. Oh, I don't even know what they're all backed up over there. Well, that is not honestly what happened. I screwed up the order. So the person said, was that you or was that the kitchen? And I said, it was me. I messed it up. I'm sorry. So asking questions like that and getting real answers is a great way to glean the values that this person cares about. I was interviewing someone about, I think the question I asked was something like, hey, tell me about a time, it was either me or it was the person who was interviewing with me, asked the question, tell me about a time that a project didn't go as planned. Or tell me about a time that you had some setbacks with a project. Well, give me an example. The person talked about this like big initiative they had, this website they were launching for their organization, all this stuff. And either me or the person with me asked, well, what ended up happening? What'd you do? And the person goes, oh, that's someone else's problem, not mine. And I thought, oof, okay. So that tells me something a little bit about yourself. So you're asking questions to figure out the nature of who this person is, and you're pairing that with skill related questions. So for me, video editing, hey, what program do you like to use? Oh, I like Adobe. Oh, I like DaVinci. Oh, I like Final Cut. Okay, yeah. Hey, tell me, why did you choose DaVinci over Adobe? Honestly, because of like, these are just questions. I'm curious, but also I'm getting a sense of what their expertise is. Now, the person may say, oh, I don't know. I don't use any of those. I use Canva for everything, which Canva is not a video editing platform. So if they say something like that, I'm like, okay. Or maybe they say, oh, I use Opus, which Opus is an AI cutting tool. It uses AI to auto cut sound bites for people. So if they say, oh, I use Opus, what that tells me is this person has no technical experience. They're not a good fit for the position. And no matter how wholesome, cute, convincing or fun, cute makes it sound creepy, by the way. I don't, for the record, I don't mean like physically cute. I mean like, warm, bubbly personality. But let me try to avoid getting canceled on my own podcast here. But no matter how much we vibe together, this person will never get hired because they don't have the skill set. They've never done it before. People will say anything to get in the door. They'll say anything to get in an interview. I hired for a video editing role a couple of years ago, or actually, no, it was a social media role. And the number of people who sent me long stacks of bullet points on all the things they had accomplished, only to get in the interview with them and find out they really didn't have any experience. Now, nowadays, I'm so much better at it than I was then. And then I actually asked for like portfolios of work and things like that. But you're testing for both. You're looking at both. You're not doing these weird tricks or mind games or what have you. Ultimately, what those things do is they waste your time. And if you're going to be competitive in business, you got to be agile. You got to be quick. You can't waste time. For years, the expression has been hire slow, fire fast. I think there are ways to hire faster and still fire fast. Make the decisions you need to make for you to grow your team, grow your business, and serve your customers better. That's the recipe for winning long term. Don't do any of this silly stuff. Hey, that's the episode on today's podcast. I appreciate you checking out the show today. If you enjoyed the podcast and you're a first-time listener, click that subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are. Don't forget also, you can support the podcast on our Patreon or advertise on the show at Blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. That's today's good advice. Thanks for listening. See you later.